The rain fell like silver needles through the night. The human colony on Arden 9, a cold mining planet on the edge of the galaxy, was half asleep. Only a few lights burned in the long metal corridors, and the air smelled of dust, oil, and something faintly sad. Dr. Elias Rane, a human biologist, was used to nights like this, quiet, lonely, and full of unfinished experiments. He lived alone in a small research cabin near the colony's border. His work was simple but important, studying alien organisms that survived the harsh cold of Arden 9. That night, the wind was howling outside when his scanner beeped, a soft but sharp sound that meant something alive was moving near the fence. Elias frowned. Nothing ever came that close. Most alien creatures stayed far from human lights. He stood up, grabbed his coat, and stepped out into the freezing rain. At first he saw nothing. Just darkness and rain, but then a faint movement. Something small collapsed near the fence. He ran forward, boots splashing in the mud, and saw a figure lying on the ground. It wasn't human. She looked young, maybe 16 or 17 by human measure. Her skin was pale blue and glowing faintly in the dark like soft moonlight. Thin, silver hair stuck to her face. Her breathing was weak, almost silent, and her clothes, if they could be called that, were torn and soaked. Elias knelt beside her. "Hey, can you hear me?" he asked, but she didn't respond. Her body was freezing cold, almost lifeless. Without thinking twice, he lifted her up and carried her inside. The heater hummed softly as Elias laid her on the small medical bed in his lab. He wrapped her in thermal sheets and connected a few sensors. Her pulse was faint, her temperature dangerously low. She wasn't just any alien. Her physiology was unlike any species he had studied. Hours passed. He monitored her heartbeat, changed her fluids, and finally sat back, exhausted. The storm outside continued to rage. He glanced at her again and whispered, "Who are you?" To his surprise, her eyes opened. They were large and bright, silver with rings of light that seemed to move slowly, like ripples in water. She stared at him, scared and confused. "You're safe," Elias said softly. "I'm not going to hurt you," she blinked, her lips trembling. "Human?" Her voice was weak, cracked. "Yes," he said. "I'm human." "You're on a human colony. You were outside in the storm. What were you doing out there?" She looked away as if trying to remember something painful. Then she whispered, "They left me." "Who left you?" "My people," she said, closing her eyes. "They said I was useless. I failed the bond test," Elias frowned. "Bond test?" She didn't answer. Her voice trembled again. "Please don't send me back. I'll do anything. Anything you ask. Just let me stay." Elias didn't know what to say. In all his years studying alien life, he had never heard a voice so full of fear and hope at the same time. He wanted to ask more questions, but he could see she was too weak. "Rest," he said gently. "You're safe here," she smiled faintly. "Thank you, human." He stayed awake the rest of the night, watching over her. The storm outside slowed, and by morning the first light of Arden's twin suns crept through the window. When she finally woke again, she looked stronger. She sat up slowly, glancing around the small lab filled with glowing instruments and humming machines. "This is your place?" she asked softly. "Yes, I work here. Study alien life." He paused. "But you're different from anything I've seen." She hesitated, then said, "My name is Lyra. I was born on Tyrannus, a world that hates weakness. If you fail a test, they erase your name. I ran away before they could." Elias nodded slowly. "Then you're safe here, Lyra." Her eyes filled with tears, silver tears that glowed as they fell. "Why?" she whispered. "Why would a human help me?" He smiled sadly. "Because you needed help, and that's enough reason." Lyra stared at him as if trying to understand something she had never believed before. In her world, kindness was a weakness. On this cold planet, it was the only warmth left. That night, when the lights dimmed again, Elias sat at his desk writing notes about her strange biology. But his thoughts kept drifting back to her voice. The way she had said, "Let me stay." He didn't know what she had done. He didn't know what danger might come from sheltering her. But deep down, something in him knew this was no accident. The universe had brought her to his door for a reason. As he turned off the lights, Lyra's voice broke the silence again, soft and trembling. "In bed, in the shower." "Day or night," she whispered, her silver eyes glowing faintly in the dark. "I'll do anything. Just don't make me go back." Elias froze. Not because of fear, but because of the sadness in her tone. It wasn't a threat. It was a cry for life. He walked over, pulled a blanket over her, and said quietly, "You're staying. No one's sending you anywhere." Outside, the storm began again. But inside that small cabin on Arden 9, something new had begun. Not an experiment, not a rescue mission, but a fragile bond between two worlds. And neither of them knew yet how far that bond would be tested. The next morning on Arden 9 was cold and quiet. The storm had stopped, but thin sheets of frost covered everything like glass. Inside Dr. Elias Rani's lab, the only sound was the steady hum of machines and the slow rhythm of Lyra's breathing. Elias hadn't slept. He sat at his desk, staring at the faint glow of his screen filled with unread data. He had spent years studying alien life, yet this one fragile being lying on his medical bed seemed to change everything. Lyra. Her name echoed in his mind like a small melody he couldn't forget. She woke up with a start, gasping softly as if waking from a nightmare. Elias looked up immediately. "You're okay," he said gently. "You're safe." Her eyes, silver and full of quiet light, searched the room. "The rain stopped?" "Yes, it's morning now." Lyra looked around curiously. She saw metal walls lined with blinking lights, glass containers filled with glowing samples, and a tiny pot of green moss sitting near the window. "You grow this?" she asked, touching the moss with fascination. Elias smiled faintly. "Yes, it's a type of Terran plant. Hard to keep alive here, but it reminds me of home." "Home," Lyra whispered, tasting the word like it was foreign. "My home was never warm like this." "Never safe." Elias didn't press further. He could see the sadness in her face. "You don't have to talk about it," he said. "You're free to rest." But Lyra shook her head. "No, I want to help." "You saved me." "I should work," he frowned. "Work?" "Yes, I can clean, repair, learn, anything, just let me stay." Her voice trembled, but her eyes were full of determination. Elias sighed. "You don't owe me anything, Lyra, you just need to recover." "I can't rest," she whispered. "When I rest, I remember their faces." Elias looked at her, and for the first time he saw not just an alien, but someone who carried deep pain, just like humans did. Later that day, Elias ran tests on a strange crystal found near the mining fields. While he worked, Lyra watched silently from a corner, wrapped in a blanket. She was quiet but alert, studying every move he made. "Why do humans work so much?" she asked softly. Elias chuckled. "Because we're always trying to fix things we broke." "Even hearts?" she asked suddenly. He paused, surprised by the question. "Sometimes," he said, smiling sadly. "But that's harder." Lyra tilted her head. "In my world, if something breaks, we throw it away." "That's why your world left you behind," Elias said before he could stop himself. Lyra looked down. Her fingers tightened around the blanket. "Yes," she whispered. "They did." Silence filled the room. The machines beeped softly, marking the rhythm of their thoughts. That night, Elias reviewed her test results. Something was strange. Her blood contained bioluminescent enzymes that reacted to human heat. When she was near him, her body temperature rose slightly and her glowing skin shimmered faintly brighter. It wasn't just beauty. It was biology, a form of bond adaptation. He had read theories about alien species that could adapt emotionally and physically to those they trusted, but he had never seen it happen. While he analyzed the data, Lyra walked quietly to his side. "What are you doing?" "Studying you," he said. "Trying to understand your biology. Will you use it?" "To sell to the colony?" she asked softly. He turned toward her. "What? No. Never, I'm not like that." Her voice trembled. "Humans take. They always take. That's what they said on Tyrannos." Elias took a deep breath. "Maybe some do, but not all of us. I don't want anything from you, Lyra. I just want you to live." Lyra stared at him for a long moment. Then quietly she whispered, "Why?" He smiled faintly. "Because life matters, even when it's not human." Her eyes softened. "You sound like my mother," she said. "She used to tell me that before they—" Her voice broke and she stopped. Elias gently handed her a cup of warm liquid. "Drink this," he said. She took it, sipping slowly. "Warm," she murmured. "Like sunlight." Hours later, while Elias worked in the lab's back room, Lyra walked around curiously. She touched the glass tanks, watched tiny creatures float inside, and listened to the hum of machines. Then she stopped. There was a faint sound, a rhythmic vibration from the ceiling vents. At first she thought it was just machinery, but then she heard something else. A voice. Unauthorized life form detected in Sector B. Lyra froze. The colony's scanners were active. They were searching for her. She rushed to Elias, fear in her glowing eyes. "They're coming," she whispered. "The colony. They found me." Elias turned sharply. "What? How?" "The bio-trackers. My people mark all who fail the test. They can sense me." He looked at her trembling hands, the panic in her face. "It's okay. We'll hide you." "You don't understand," she said, her voice breaking. "If they find me here, they'll erase everything, even you." Elias stepped closer, firm and calm. "Then let them try." Lyra stared at him in disbelief. "You would fight them for me?" "Yes," he said simply. "Because no one deserves to be thrown away." The scanner's noise grew louder outside, a distant mechanical hum echoing across the icy night. Elias turned off the main power, leaving the lab bathed only in soft emergency light. Lyra's skin glowed faintly in the darkness, her fear and hope shimmering together. She whispered almost to herself, "You shouldn't risk this, human." Elias looked at her, his voice quiet but steady. "You're not a risk. You're proof that compassion still matters." Lyra looked at him for a long moment, tears shining in her eyes. Then softly she said the words that would stay with him forever. "In my world, mercy is weakness, but here, maybe it's strength." Outside, the scanners passed by, their lights fading into the storm. For now, they were safe. But Elias knew this was only the beginning. The galaxy was wide, cruel, and full of rules. And somewhere out there, the ones who had abandoned Lyra would soon learn that humans don't abandon the helpless. And that one act of kindness might just change everything. The following days on Arden 9 passed in uneasy silence. Dr. Elias Rani pretended everything was normal, but nothing felt normal anymore. Lyra, the alien girl he had rescued, now moved quietly around the lab, fragile yet alert, curious about every human object. Each morning she helped him clean the instruments and organize data. She learned fast, as if her mind recorded everything in one glance. But sometimes Elias would catch her staring at her reflection in the glass wall, like she didn't recognize the face staring back. One morning, while Elias adjusted the oxygen filters, Lyra suddenly winced. Her skin, normally soft blue, flashed silver for a moment. Then she gasped and pressed a hand against her chest. "Lyra?" Elias rushed over. "What's wrong? I don't know," she whispered. "It burns inside." Elias scanned her vitals on the monitor. Her pulse was irregular, her internal energy readings spiking beyond normal levels. "This isn't possible," he muttered. "Your cells are reacting to something." "To what?" she asked, fear in her trembling voice. He hesitated, staring at the glowing data. "To me," he said quietly. That night he analyzed a sample of her blood. What he found left him speechless. Her blood was not just a biological fluid. It was alive. Tiny luminous particles within it seemed to react to human presence. When exposed to his own DNA sample, they changed shape, forming patterns connecting like living circuits. He whispered to himself, "This isn't natural evolution. This is design." Lyra stood at the doorway watching him. "You found something, didn't you?" Elias turned to her, his face pale. "Lyra, your blood. It's not just part of you. It's technology. Bioengineered nanites fused with organic tissue. Someone created your kind." Lyra's hands shook. No, that's not true. It explains the mark your people can track. It's inside you. You were made to serve, not live freely." She looked away, tears forming. "I told you my world hates weakness. Now you see why. We were made to obey, perfect, loyal, emotionless, but I felt too much." Elias stood silently, realizing the weight of her words. Lyra wasn't just a runaway. She was a defect, a creation that dared to feel. Later that night, when the lights dimmed, Lyra sat near the window, staring at the endless cold outside. "Why do humans fight so hard to live?" she asked softly. Elias was at his desk, still working. "Because life's all we have. Even when it hurts, we hold on to it. Even when others don't want you." He looked at her. "Especially then." Lyra smiled faintly, though her eyes shimmered with sadness. "You're strange, human. You risk everything for someone you barely know. Maybe that's what makes us human," he said. Her gaze softened. Then I wish I was human. The next day, Elias received a transmission from the colony's central office. Dr. Rani, you are to report to Security Division immediately. Routine inspection. Routine. That word sent chills down his spine. He turned off the communicator quickly. Lyra, who had been nearby, looked at him nervously. They know? Not yet, Elias said. But they're checking. We have to be careful. She stepped closer. You should send me away. I don't want you hurt because of me. Elias shook his head. I already made my choice. But why? She whispered. Why care for me? He looked at her, his voice low. Because someone has to. Because kindness only means something when it's dangerous. That night, as the colony lights flickered outside, Elias prepared to hide Lyra's biosignature. He built a small containment field, an experimental device meant to block energy scans. Lyra stood inside the glowing ring while he calibrated it. Will this hurt? Maybe a little, Elias said. But it will mask your energy. They won't detect you. She nodded, brave but trembling. Do it. Elias activated the device. The air around her shimmered, humming softly. Lyra winced, gripping the sides. Light burst from her veins like silver lightning. Elias watched in horror as her heart rate spiked again. Too high, too fast. Lyra, hold on, he shouted. Her eyes glowed bright white, and then the energy exploded outward, knocking Elias to the floor. The lights flickered, alarms blared, and for a moment everything was silent. When Elias looked up, Lyra was kneeling on the floor, panting, but alive. The containment field had stabilized, and so had she. It worked. Elias breathed. Lyra looked up at him, weak but smiling. You're insane human, he laughed softly. Takes one to know one. But unknown to them, the brief power surge had reached the colony's monitoring systems. In the central security room, an officer frowned at the glowing screen. Unregistered energy spike, Sector 3, Dr. Rain's outpost. Probably a lab test, another said lazily. The officer zoomed in, watching the faint trace. No, this pattern, it's not human. He tapped the console, recording the data. Send a recon drone. Quietly. Back in the lab, Elias was cleaning up the equipment when he noticed Lyra staring at the moss plant again. She touched it gently, and to his surprise, the dying leaves turned green. Alive again. He froze. Lyra, how did you do that? She blinked. I don't know. I just wanted it to live. Her blood reacted again, glowing softly. Elias's mind raced. Her bioenergy could restore life, not just adapt, but heal. It wasn't a weapon. It was hope. But hope was the most dangerous thing in the galaxy. He stared at her, realization dawning. Lyra, they didn't fear your weakness. They feared what you could become. She looked at him, confused. What do you mean? You're not a defect, Elias said slowly. Your evolution. Lyra's breath caught. Then why did they abandon me? Because you made them feel small, Elias whispered. Because you remind them what life should mean. Outside, the silent drone approached through the icy wind, scanning the outpost. Its sensors locked onto a faint pulse, hidden, but still there. Inside, Elias and Lyra stood together, unaware that the world was already closing in. But for that one fragile moment, surrounded by the hum of machines and the sound of their own hearts, something powerful grew between them. Not love yet, but something deeper. A promise that humanity was more than survival and that maybe, just maybe, mercy could still change the stars. The night returned to Arden 9 like a frozen shadow. The wind howled across the metallic plains and thin flakes of ice danced under the pale moons. Inside his outpost, Dr. Elias Rani worked silently, trying to pretend life hadn't changed. But every corner of his lab now carried her presence. A blanket folded on the chair, a cup half full of cold water, and soft footprints that glowed faintly in the dark. Lyra. She moved differently now, quieter but stronger. Her wounds had healed, and her silver-blue skin shimmered like liquid light when she breathed. She still spoke little, but her eyes, they carried storms. Elias tried to focus on his notes. The data on her bioluminescent cells was beyond anything human science had seen. She could heal organic matter. She could absorb radiation. She was, in every way, a miracle. And miracles in human history never stayed hidden for long. Outside the lab, something moved. Small, silent, precise. A recon drone, round, silver and deadly quiet, hovered low across the snow, its sensor lights flickering as it scanned for signs of life. It wasn't large, but it didn't need to be. Its purpose was simple: find, record, and report. Inside, Lyra paused mid-step, her head turning sharply toward the door. "Something's outside," she whispered. Elias frowned, still looking at the monitor. "Probably just wind sensors." "No," she said firmly, voice low but clear. "It's watching us." Elias turned, startled by the certainty in her tone. He opened the external feed. The screen flickered to show a faint heat signature moving across the snow. His stomach dropped. Damn, they sent a drone. Lyra's eyes widened. "They found us?" "Not yet," he said. "But they will if we don't move." Elias rushed to the main console and killed all power sources except life support. The lights dimmed instantly, leaving only the soft pulse of emergency glow. The lab became silent, and too silent. Lyra moved closer. "What do we do?" "Hide, stay behind the thermal shields. It can't see you if you don't move." She looked at him nervously. "What about you?" "I'll handle it." He grabbed a manual control tablet and opened the airlock remotely. Outside, the wind roared through the speakers as the door cracked open. The storm returned before dawn. Cold wind slammed against the steel walls of the outpost, howling like a beast in pain. Inside, the lights flickered as Dr. Elias Rane worked feverishly to wipe every trace of data that might expose Lyra. Lines of code scrolled across his screens. He deleted logs, burned records, and rerouted power to false networks. Every heartbeat echoed in his ears like a countdown. Lyra stood behind him, wrapped in a thick blanket, her silver eyes watching the dark windows. "They're close," she whispered. Elias didn't ask how she knew. He had learned to trust her instincts. She could sense movement, feel energy through the air like a pulse. "How many?" he asked. "3? Maybe 4 human soldiers," she said softly. "One machine," he froze. "A hunter unit." Lyra nodded. "It's built to find things that shouldn't exist." Elias clenched his fists. "Then we make sure it doesn't find you?" By the time the colony's shuttle landed outside, the lab looked spotless. Too spotless. Elias sat at his desk, pretending to study mineral samples while Lyra hid behind the sealed cargo panel under the floor. She crouched silently, clutching a small oxygen tube. The space was dark, cramped, and freezing. Her heartbeat echoed like thunder in her ears. The door alarm beeped. Elias pressed the control. The airlock hissed open. 4 figures stepped inside. 3 soldiers in gray armor and 1 tall mechanical unit, its red lens glowing like a burning eye. "Dr. Rane," the lead officer said coolly. "Inspection Protocol 47B. Your outpost registered unauthorized energy activity." Elias stood slowly, calm on the outside, though his pulse raced. "That was a malfunction. My generator's old." The officer scanned the room with a handheld device. "We'll verify that." The hunter unit moved forward, its steps heavy and precise. Its lens rotated, scanning walls, floor, even the air itself. It made no sound but the faint hum of its processors. Elias forced himself to speak casually. "Do you always bring war machines to check power surges?" The officer didn't smile. "We've had reports of alien infiltration near the outer colonies. A drone went missing near your sector. You wouldn't know anything about that, would you?" Elias kept his face blank. "No." The hunter stopped in front of him, its voice deep and synthetic. "Lie detected." Elias's heart jumped. "You can't read humans perfectly. Your algorithms misfire under stress environments." "Statement unverified," the hunter replied coldly. It turned toward the floor, went toward the hidden panel. Under the floor, Lyra pressed a hand to her chest. She could feel its scanning beam brushing over her body like heat on her skin. Her blood pulsed faster, reacting. The faint glow began to leak from her veins. "No," she whispered. "Not now." She bit her lip until it bled, trying to control it. But the glow grew brighter. Elias saw the faint light seeping through the cracks in the panel. His mind raced. He slammed his hand on the desk, knocking over a container of glowing algae. The biolight splattered across the floor, drawing the machine's sensors away. "Careful," he barked. "Those samples are volatile." The officer stepped back, alarmed. "What are you doing?" "Saving your suits from contamination," Elias snapped. "You step on that, you'll be glowing for a week." The soldiers hesitated. The hunter paused, recalibrating. For a few seconds, that was all he needed. Lyra's glow faded. Elias smiled slightly, pretending frustration. Can we wrap this up? I have real work to do. The officer exchanged glances with the others. We'll finish scanning and go. 10 tense minutes passed. The hunter moved through every room, scanning, recording, searching. Lyra didn't move an inch. Her breathing slowed to a whisper. Finally, the officer spoke. Nothing here. Just standard human tech, Elias shrugged. Told you. No aliens, no drama. But as they turned to leave, the hunter's lens flashed red again. Anomaly detected. Non-human DNA trace present in air sample. Elias's blood ran cold. The officer turned sharply. Where? Proximity. 1 meter from subject Rane. Every gun raised instantly. Elias raised his hands. Wait, listen to me. It's residue from my studies. Alien spores, not a life form. The hunter moved closer, lens narrowing. Source unconfirmed. Accessing thermal scan. Suddenly, the floor beneath them glowed silver. The metal pulsed, and Lyra rose up through it, light streaming from her skin. Stop, she cried. Don't hurt him. The soldier stumbled back, blinded by the radiance. The hunter recoiled, its sensors overloading. Elias shouted, Lyra, no! But it was too late. The energy burst from her body. A wave of pure light that melted frost, short-circuited devices, and threw the soldiers to the ground. The hunter staggered, its armor sizzling with heat. When the light faded, silence filled the lab. Smoke drifted through the air. Lyra fell to her knees, exhausted, glowing faintly. Elias rushed to her side, catching her before she hit the floor. The soldiers groaned, dazed but alive. The hunter, damaged, tried to stand. Sparks flying from its joints. The officer, coughing, managed to shout, Contain her! Elias stood in front of Lyra, eyes blazing. No one's touching her. The hunter raised its arm, charging a weapon. Elias grabbed a plasma cutter from his desk and swung. The blade sliced through the machine's wrist in a shower of sparks. Elias, Lyra cried. The hunter stumbled, mechanical voice glitching. Human interference. Unacceptable. Elias pointed the cutter at its head. Then accept this, he fired. The beam pierced through the hunter's lens. The machine fell backward, lifeless. The soldiers froze, shocked. Elias turned to them, breathing hard. You saw nothing. You report this, and I swear. But before he could finish, Lyra stepped forward. Her body glowed again, but this time softly, calm, gentle. The soldiers' weapons lowered as warmth filled the air. Their fear vanished, replaced by quiet awe. Leave, she said softly. Forget what you saw. Forget me. Her voice echoed like music, vibrating through their minds. The men blinked, confused. Then one by one, they holstered their guns and walked out silently into the storm. When the door closed, Lyra collapsed. Elias caught her, his hands shaking. What did you do? Her eyes fluttered open. I made them remember peace, she whispered. For a moment. You saved us, he said, voice trembling. She smiled weakly. No, human. You saved me first. Outside, the wind howled again, sweeping over the bodies of metal and snow. Inside, 2 lives, one human, one not, breathed in sync. For now, they were safe. But Elias knew the colony wouldn't stop. The officers would report strange readings, missing soldiers, and a destroyed hunter. The chase had just begun. The wind never stopped on Arden 9. It howled across the steel plains like a living creature, gnawing at metal and bone alike. The storm that morning was cruel, cold enough to turn breath into crystal. Dr. Elias Rane pulled the hood of his thermal suit tighter as he guided the hover sled through the white fog. Beside him sat Lyra, weak but awake, her silver eyes dim under the frost. Behind them, the outline of his outpost faded into nothing, swallowed by snow and distance. They had left everything behind, his research, his home, his life. Are we far enough? Lyra asked softly, her voice trembling through the comlink. Not yet, Elias said. The colony will send more units. We have to reach the ridge before nightfall. Her gaze lingered on the horizon. You should have left me. He laughed, bitter and tired. Too late for that. Humanity has a habit of doing stupid things when hearts get involved. Lyra smiled faintly. Then maybe your kind isn't so different from mine. Hours passed. The storm thickened, turning the world into a sea of white. Elias's fingers numbed on the controls. The sled engine sputtered, coughing against the cold. Come on, he muttered. Not now. Lyra placed a hand on the engine's panel. Her skin glowed faintly, soft, silver light spreading across the metal. The machine hummed back to life. Elias blinked. You fixed it? Not fixed, she said quietly. I gave it a little life. He stared at her, awed. Lyra, you're not just bioengineered. You generate energy. She looked down, almost ashamed. That's why they made me. To power their world. To give without choice. Elias's jaw tightened. Then they don't deserve you. She glanced at him, her voice soft. Do you deserve me, human? He hesitated. The question wasn't flirtation. It was pain. He met her gaze and said, No one deserves another life. We earn it by how we protect it. Her lips parted in a faint smile. You speak like someone who's lost before. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. The storm carried enough ghosts. By evening, they reached the frozen ridge, a jagged wall of ice that stretched toward the clouds. Beyond it lay the black expanse, a desolate zone no one dared to cross. The colony's scanners couldn't reach that far. It was their only chance. Elias parked the sled behind a rock formation and activated the thermal barrier. Lyra sank to the ground, exhausted. Her skin flickered again, the glow weaker than before. Something's wrong, she whispered. Elias knelt beside her, scanning her vitals. You're overheating from inside. Your body's energy output is unstable. She shook her head slowly. No, it's reacting to the signal. What signal? She pointed upward. Through the storm, a faint blue light pulsed in the clouds, rhythmic, distant, and artificial. They found me, she said. My people, the overseers. Elias felt the weight of her words sink into his bones. They're coming here? Yes, to erase the mistake. He stood, staring at the cold horizon. Then we don't run anymore. Lyra's eyes widened. Elias, you can't fight them. They have ships, the armies. I'm not fighting to win, he said. I'm fighting to show them something they've forgotten. What's that? Human mercy. Night fell fast on Arden 9. The wind screamed through the rocks like the cry of dying stars. Elias built a small campfire with fusion rods, the only warmth for miles. Lyra sat beside it, her glow flickering in rhythm with the flames. When they come, she whispered, and they'll kill you first. Elias smiled tiredly. That's comforting. I'm serious, she said. They'll see you as contamination. A human who touched their design. He looked into the fire. Maybe that's what humanity does best. Contaminate the universe with compassion. Lyra stared at him. Part of her wanted to believe. Another part too afraid to. Then she whispered, In the dark I can still feel the others. The voices. They're calling me to return. It hurts to resist, Elias took her hand. Then hold on to me instead. Her fingers, glowing faintly, intertwined with his. The warmth spread between them, small but real, defying the endless cold around. Far above the planet, something broke through the storm clouds. A silver ship, silent and curved like a blade. The overseers had arrived. Inside, faceless pilots spoke in one cold voice. Subject 47B located. Bioenergy stable. Human contamination detected. Prepare for purge. Blue beams cut through the clouds, scanning the surface. Lyra gasped, clutching her chest. They're here. Elias grabbed his pack. Then let's make sure they regret it. Minutes later, as the first beam of light hit the ridge, the ground shook violently. The overseer ship descended, engines screaming like thunder. Snow and fire mixed in the air. Elias pulled Lyra behind a boulder. Stay down. The ship's speakers roared. Defective construct Lyra 47B, surrender for dismantling. Lyra's voice shook. They won't stop until I'm gone. Elias looked at her, the trembling, fragile being who still found strength to protect others. Then we make them see you're alive. He stood and stepped out into the storm. The ship's scanners locked on him instantly. Human detected, irrelevant. Yeah? Elias shouted over the wind. Then maybe it's time humans became relevant again. He fired his plasma cutter at the nearest scanner node. The beam cracked through the night, shorting one of the sensors. Sparks flew. Hostile action confirmed, the ship declared. Eliminate. A blast of energy slammed into the ground near him, throwing him backward. Snow exploded around them. Lyra screamed, her power surging out of control. The air vibrated, her glow turning blinding white. Stop, she cried to the sky. Leave him. Her voice wasn't just sound, it was energy. The snow lifted, frozen midair as the light burst from her body in waves. The ship's hull warped, its systems glitching. Elias, half buried in snow, stared in awe. Lyra. She rose into the air, surrounded by a halo of silver light. Her tears turned to glowing drops that fell like stars. I won't be your machine anymore, she said, voice echoing across the valley. I'm alive! The overseer's ship trembled, its core reacting violently to the biosignal it had tried to control. Then with a flash of light it vanished, disappearing into hyperspace, leaving only silence behind. Lyra collapsed, falling into Elias's arms. He held her tight, trembling. You did it. She smiled weakly. No, human. We did. The snow settled around them, quiet again. Above, the sky was clear for the first time in months, 2 pale moons shining through the clouds. For the first time, Arden 9 didn't feel like a prison. It felt like a promise. The storm had passed, but the silence that followed felt even heavier. Snow blanketed the valley in blinding white, untouched except for the 2 figures huddled near a broken hoversled, a human and an alien girl who had just changed the fate of 2 worlds. Dr. Elias Rane sat beside the dying fire, his hands trembling from exhaustion. Across from him, Lyra rested on a thermal sheet, her faint glow flickering like a candle in the wind. She was alive. Barely. The sky above was clearer than it had ever been. The twin moons hung low and the stars shimmered as if they were watching. Elias had no idea what time it was anymore, or if time even mattered. He reached for her hand. It was cold but still pulsing with life. You burned your energy too fast, he whispered. Her lips moved weakly. It was the only way. They won't come again. Elias looked up at the empty horizon. Maybe not the overseers, but the colony won't let this go. They'll see the explosion, the readings. Lyra gave a small, tired laugh. Humans are as stubborn as we are, he smiled faintly. You noticed. As the hours passed, he built a small shelter out of wreckage and activated a weak signal jammer. The cold crept in, numbing his fingers. His supplies were nearly gone and he could hear distant thunder, the colony's patrol crafts sweeping the area. Lyra stirred, her voice soft. You can leave me here, Elias, I'll survive. They'll kill you if they find us together. He shook his head immediately. I didn't come this far to leave you in the snow. You already gave up everything. I gave up nothing, he said firmly. Everything I ever wanted, everything I ever believed. It's standing right in front of me. Lyra blinked, her silver eyes glimmering. You speak as if I'm worth that. He leaned closer. You are. Not because you're powerful. Because you feel. Because you choose kindness in a universe that forgot what it means. For a moment she couldn't breathe. In her world, no one had ever said words like that. At dawn, the colony's ships appeared on the horizon, black dots growing larger with each passing second. Elias stood and grabbed his pulse rifle, his face pale but resolute. We have one chance. If we reach the southern ravine, the scanners can't track us. The mineral field interferes with their signals. Lyra tried to stand but stumbled. Her strength was gone. Elias caught her. Hey, you're not dying on me. She smiled faintly. You sound sure. He looked her straight in the eyes. Because I've already decided. If they take you, they take me too. She opened her mouth to protest, but the roar of engines drowned her words. 3 colony crafts descended, snow whipping into spirals beneath them. Soldiers in white armor stepped out, their rifles glowing blue. A commander's voice boomed through the speakers. Dr. Elias Rane, you are under arrest for harboring and assisting a non-registered entity. Surrender immediately. Elias raised his hand slowly, not in surrender, but in defiance. She's not an entity. She's alive. Step away from the alien, doctor. No, he said. Not this time. Lyra stood behind him, trembling. Her light flickered again, unstable. The commander sighed. You can't protect her. She's a threat to every system we've built. Elias's voice rose above the wind. Then maybe your systems are the problem. For a moment, the soldiers hesitated. The human in front of them didn't look like a criminal. He looked like something they'd forgotten existed, someone willing to care. But orders were orders. The rifles powered up. Elias whispered to Lyra, Run when I tell you. She shook her head. No, I'm not running anymore. And then it happened. The moment that would later be whispered across the colonies as myth. Lyra stepped forward, spreading her hands. Light flowed from her body, not violent this time, but calm, radiant, full of warmth. The snow melted in a perfect circle around her. I'm not your weapon, she said softly. I'm not your machine. I am life. The soldiers froze. Their weapons dropped slightly. The glow wrapped around them, soft and golden, like sunlight in a world that hadn't seen it in centuries. Elias stared in awe. Lyra, she turned to him, smiling through tears. You showed me what mercy means. Now I'll show them. The energy rose higher, swirling into the sky, a column of light piercing the clouds. Every ship, every scanner, every communication network in orbit caught the signal. A single message echoed through every channel. Life is not property. It is promise. Then the light faded. When the brightness cleared, the soldiers were kneeling, their helmets removed, eyes wet with something that looked like understanding. The commander dropped his weapon. What have we done? Elias stepped forward, helping Lyra stand. You remembered what you were supposed to be, he said softly. The commander nodded slowly. We'll report a false reading. You were never here. Elias blinked in surprise. Why? Because maybe the galaxy needs her. The commander said quietly, and maybe it needs more like you. Days later, deep in the southern valleys, Elias and Lyra built a new shelter beneath a frozen ridge. The colony no longer hunted them. Rumors spread instead, of a human who defied orders and an alien girl who glowed like the dawn. As the winds calmed, Lyra sat outside the cave, watching the stars. They'll write songs about you one day, she said with a faint smile. Elias chuckled. I hope they spell my name right. She looked at him, serious now. When you found me in the rain, I wanted to die. I thought I was broken, but you made me believe that mercy isn't weakness. He placed a hand on her shoulder, and you made me believe that kindness still has power. They sat in silence for a long while, two tiny figures under an endless sky. Then Lyra whispered the words that had started it all. Her voice soft as falling snow, in bed, in the shower, day or night. I said I'd do anything just to stay. But I didn't know what that meant then. Elias smiled. And now? Now I know, she said, her silver eyes glowing softly. It means to live. To fight for someone, even when the universe says you shouldn't. He looked up at the stars, their light reflecting in his tired eyes. Then we'll keep fighting together. The wind whispered through the valley like a song, carrying their laughter into the night. Far above, in the silent void, the stars shimmered brighter, as if they too remembered her name. Lyra, the girl who wasn't supposed to exist. The alien who learned to be human,